Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of our podcast. I'm very excited to welcome a local talent here in Calgary. He's a cellist and a good friend of mine as of today. And his name is Takumi Rodgers, and let's welcome him. Hi, Takumi.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
It's exciting to be part of this project. I'm happy to be one of your first guests on this podcast.
Thanks. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a 21-year-old cellist based in Calgary, Alberta. I've been playing the cello for 10 years. I've been in Calgary for 5 years, pursuing my bachelor's of music in cello performance with Becker Sandboss at the University of Calgary.
That's awesome. And so how did you start with the cello?
It's a bit of a convoluted story. It didn't actually come from a place of any particular love or passion. So I grew up in Brisbane, Australia. And in Australia, the school systems there have strings programs the way we have the band programs here in Alberta and a lot of other places. So fortunately through that, I had the opportunity to choose a string instrument when I was in the 4th grade. At the time, I originally was going to pick up the double bass. You know, you see it in jazz, you see it a little bit more in popular media. And so it was just something I was a little more familiar with. So I gave the double bass a try, little 11-year-old me, plucked around a little bit and realized...
Like a full-size one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I realized this thing's a little big.
Yeah.
Big. You know, what if there was something similar, maybe a size down? Because I don't want to play violin. I want to play violin. That's a little squeaky for me. And, of course, 11-year-old me didn't know what a viola was.
Right.
So,
most adults don't either.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, so that's how I ended up playing the cello. And about a year into this school program, I wasn't necessarily taking it super seriously. Our teacher, Miss Donovan, shout out to Miss Donovan if you're still out there, showed us the Two Cellos music video for Thunderstruck.
Okay, yeah, those guys are cool.
Those guys were cool, and 11-year-old me thought so. And I was like, you know what? That's not too bad. I'll take this a little seriously, and that's how I started taking cello lessons.
That's awesome. You know, it's funny you actually mentioned that because I feel like if a lot of string players are actually honest, portability and mobility was actually probably one of the top reasons of choosing their instrument, sometimes even over how it sounds. Anyway, but I'm just outing a bunch of my friends by saying this. But yeah. So how did you decide to make this your career? Like, what was the push that gave you any thought that you could do cello as a passion and as a career going forward, trying to earn money in this crazy world?
I love that question. I love that you say, trying to earn money in this crazy world because, you know, from the outside looking in, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to try and commit a lot of time and resources like doing a degree in, you know, the arts, things like music. It's risky, right? But I am a little ways through my senior year of high school. You know, it comes time, you're doing applications, you got to figure out what are you doing with your life? Are you going to go straight into the workforce? Are you going to try and, you know, build some skills, go for higher education?
Or are you going to end up running a podcast with like 3 viewers? Yeah, you're right.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, but it's something. And for me, that decision was pushed towards post-secondary. It was a bit of the culture surrounding me. You know, you go to university, you keep learning. And for me, my options that I was interested in was computer science, psychology, or music. And I realized, you know, if I have a job in computer science or psychology, right, because that's what I'd be going to university for, is to get qualified for a job. If I have a job in one of those fields, yeah, sure, I might be interested in it. Sure, it might be, you know, something that I can wake up and do as a career. But at the end of the day, it would be a job.
Right.
I could imagine 5 years into either of those careers. Mind you, I didn't follow them, so this is coming from a little bit of a naive place, but I would say I could see in 5 years, pretty realistically, I'd wake up and say, wow, this kind of sucks. I don't want to do this, you know?
Hey,
So for me, I was like, if I'm going to get qualified for a job, if I want to build the skills for a career, would I ever hate a career in music? And I couldn't see myself saying, you know, I wake up in the morning and say, oh, dang it, I got to make music today, you know?
Right.
That, you know, it's a little bit of a surface level take, but that's really what gave me the first push to go into music professionally.
I think that's awesome because it's essentially what you do when no one is looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's amazing. And so how are you finding your experience with the cello so far? Playing, you're part of many ensembles. But also as a soloist, and you just recently had your graduation recital.
Yeah, I'm seeing.
And what's that like? Do you prefer playing with ensembles? Do you prefer being a solo?
Yeah, so at the program I was in, there's a lot of opportunity for a big variety of things. I mean, I was the principal cellist of both the Calgary Youth Orchestra and the University of Calgary Orchestra for many years, pretty much my whole undergrad. And I really love being part of a bigger thing with the orchestra. And then, of course, you're in a performance degree, you're going to do a lot of solo performing. There's a lot of rep to learn. There's a whole, you have 400 years, give or take, of an instrument to catch up on.
Yeah.
Right. And then that's a big thing that takes a lot of your time. But I found I was happiest, most fulfilled when there was a small group of people that I really enjoyed making music with in a chamber setting.
There is something magical about that.
There
right?
is something magical about that.
As a pianist, we chase that. We can't find it anywhere. Once in all my college career, I only got to do this once, and then a couple of times with singers. But really, you're just chasing it. There's something about that.
Yeah.
So
I think it's pretty fortunate, especially in the culture of string players. I mean, of course, it's going to vary wherever you are, but
yeah,
there's always ensemble stuff to be doing. I mean, I haven't heard of a full cello recital in recent years where there isn't at least a pianist involved, right?
Right.
And then, of course, there can be some dynamics of, oh, you're just an accompanist. But no, I think being on stage with another breathing, thinking, expressing human being is one of the favorite places for me, at least in music.
Yeah, I agree. I found even when playing with two pianists, I have a friend of mine, Candace, we graduated together. And she and I, when we were playing, it felt like there's some volatility involved whenever you're waiting for another person to do something or for a phrase and you're trying to catch them mid-thought. But it adds like an extra layer of the music feeling alive in the moment. You definitely, and you can't rehearse that. You definitely feel like it's reactionary in the best way. Yeah. So, that's amazing. And I'm very envious. But I also wanted to ask you, so how do you feel about the solo cello repertoire? Is it like always the Rococo variations, the, I don't know, Elgar concertos, the usual suspects for what everybody wants to play or feature?
Yeah. Well, I think the cello solo rep is like it's in an interesting position where it's not like viola solo rep where it just doesn't exist. Sorry, it's a production, but like where they're
right. People don't like alto clefs, so it's.
But it's also not in a position like the violin, the piano, the voice, where you have everything from every composer.
Yeah.
There's no one who ever skipped on your instrument. Whereas on the cello, a lot of the things that everyone wants to play, a lot of like those staples. You're talking to Elgar concerto, you're talking to Rococo. They're staples not only because it's just good music, but because we didn't necessarily get everything from everyone, right?
Yeah.
I think that the cello rep is, mind you, despite not getting everything from everyone, there is something for everyone. There's the big concertos. You got, like, for me, a personal favorite is Dvorak. I'm biased. I have a senior recital. Elgar, beautiful emotional depth. You have the Prokofiev Symphony Concertant, not technically concerto, but whatever, and Rococo, right? You got these big names with these larger than life performances, these solo works, and then you have a lot of solo cello things. A personal favorite of mine is actually the Casado solo suite for cello.
Oh yes,
a little bit. I think underappreciated. Could be played quite a bit more. Your Bach suites. There's this amazing emotional range that comes with cello solo work, whether it's true solo stuff like unaccompanied suites, or as even in a sonata with a piano and cello, or in a concerto where it's orchestra and cello. There's something for everyone, even if there's not everything for everyone.
Right, and then I understand what you mean. I think that's a great answer, but it's an interesting thing. I think that cello in a way is the perfect middle ground between how they do have a lot of repertoire, but it's not quite enough, is it? It's like for the canonized composers, anyway, let's hope we can change that.
Right. I mean, with one of the interesting things for me is I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of composers that are coming through the Prairies branch of the Canadian Music Centre here, because that's based out of our campus at the University of Calgary. And we have a great, contemporary professor, Alan Gordon Bell, who,
Yes.
lineage of Violet Archer, and there you're getting into the lines from Bartok, and
Right.
all of a sudden you're tracing it back to our canonized composers, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that people are still trying. I mean, it sounds terrible when I say it like that, but like there's so much more music to be had. There's so much music that's, it's in the air around us, and it's God bless the composers that find a way to capture it and put it on a piece of paper for us to play.
Yeah. And it's not like we ever run out of arrangements either. So even Bartok you mentioned, I'm pretty sure like the Romanian folk dances or something have been put to every instrument in every shape and form. But yeah. So I also wanted to ask you this. So in the culture of string music instruments, I've always was curious as to if there was a lot behind the actual make of the instrument and the heritage of that, because, even if you're buying a violin or whatnot, you want a Montagnana for your cello or something like that, or like a Guarneri or Stradivarius or something, and they look at different models, and still we try to recreate these templates. Like, is there something behind that, or is it mostly just the strings, or none of that really matters, and you can sound good?
Allowed in good faith to say that none of it matters. Like,
okay, yeah,
fundamentally, your instrument is and I think it's interesting as an instrumentalist because we need a tool to help make our music, whereas if you're a vocalist or people doing body percussion or anything like that, there's one less layer of abstraction to the expression.
Yeah.
I think the instrument definitely matters, especially in string culture. There's of course there's names, right? In anything that could be a product, there has to be a name, there has to be a brand, right? So of course, first thing that comes to mind is Strads. Everyone's talking about Strads. Oh, the Strad's so amazing, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are. I haven't played one, but I think the instruments do matter. I don't think the lineage does. So
right, okay.
Fundamentally, there are good instruments and there are bad instruments, right? The same that there would be with a piano, the same that there would be with, things that are even factory made. You're thinking about like Selmer is, it's a factory. Yamaha, factory. For all kinds of instruments, but it matters. Especially in cellos, violas, violins, the string family. We talk about an instrument having a tone, an instrument being able to project, the things we value generally as live performers. And, part of the reason that the big names get their names, the Montagnanas, the Guarneris, is because they appeal to these necessities, right? They have rich overtones, or, it just projects like nothing else. I think even now you get modern makers. We're slowly building up modern legends. You're getting a 20th century Strads kind of thing. Where
I actually bought myself a violin like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's a Isai model, I think. Okay. Isai. Like the original. Yeah. I don't know who actually has it, if it's in circulation or if it's in a museum. But it's a replica. Yeah. Obviously. But I think it sounds wonderful. I have nice Perezzi strings on them. The violin I have in general is way above my pay grade for it. It's I try to keep my room humid, and I hung it up. I know you should keep it on the case, but I can't help but display it. It's such a beautiful instrument, and I really wanted to play it. And I do sometimes dabble with it myself a little bit. Do the classic like Vivaldi A minor concerto, like the really easy ones. Try to, and I have a newfound appreciation as to how difficult string instruments are. Oh, goodness.
It's one voice at a time, but damn, you got to make it sound good.
I mean, in my hands, I feel like that violin is not quite a violin. It sounds like a little toy, but yeah, one day it's a goal of mine to for sure be able to master, at least come close to, if not master, but at least like be able to sound like I can play the violin, frankly. And I feel like that's not even a humble thing to ask for.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
the pursuit of multiple instruments is I think it's an amazing thing that, any musician, and even if you're not a musician, pick up an instrument, then learn another one. But I think it's a little something that especially musicians should do, right? Because I think of it as another language to play another instrument, right? You have all of these thoughts, but most of the thoughts you have are through the lens of your instrument, and then to express them is the language. You're speaking in piano, you're speaking in violin. Whereas if you learn another one, then you have a whole different vocabulary. You get, a new palette to communicate with.
Yeah. Do you play any other instruments, by the way?
Not to a good enough level. I've dabbled in guitar. I've, done my piano proficiency, but definitely far from a concert pianist.
Well, yeah, it's is it like Singerstem? You have to also take some FK, like fundamental keyboard skills style. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, every musician should sing. If they don't sing, they don't have to sound good, but they should be singing.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful professor at U of A, Dr. Ardell Reese. She told me everybody can sing, but I think I gave her a run for my money. Hi, Ardell. I hope that you see this. Also, we had a running joke that that I can make a lot of money as a singer because it's free to get in, paid to get out. So, yeah. She's actually the sweetest person. But it was... I felt like singing was such a challenge, not just on like the solfeggio level, but just the basics of getting in front of people and singing. For some reason, we don't think twice about that when we play our instruments, so we have to talk. But when we have to sing, I feel like there's just another layer to overcome.
I think there's like, when you have the instrument, like we're talking, I mentioned a little earlier, it's like you have the tool, but you also have a layer. You have that little wall in front of you where you can, you're talking through something. It's not you making the sound, it's you, coaxing the sound out of the instrument. And the second you take that instrument away and you have to sing, it's like, I make it.
Right. Yes. Yeah, it's very much an extension of yourself rather than a tool to be used, right? Like it's and I understand.
Singing is scary.
Oh, man. Yeah. Hey. So I also wanted to ask you, what do you think is like the hardest element that maybe people don't really consider on the cello or any instrument that you would actually say if some of the string instruments are rather similar in some fashion?
So, I mean, there's a few ways I can spin the question. You mean like things like technique?
Yes. I mean, like physical thing over the instrument that challenged you the most, something that truly, unless you have ease of it, you cannot master the craftsmanship of that instrument.
Even in your wording there, it's for me, it's the ease of it, right? I often find that a large palette of expression in any music is intense, right? Music can be intense. Music takes a lot from you. Even if the music is slow and perceivably calm, I think
sometimes they're harder. They give you time to think, don't they?
They give you time to think, and if you're bored playing something, the audience is going to be bored hearing it. So
absolutely.
I'll use like the pathétique slow movement. It's 2 notes per second kind of thing, but there's so much tension, right? And then for me,
we're talking Tchaikovsky pathétique, right? Yeah.
Thinking the Beethoven pathétique.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything of that matter is you have to build tension inside, but you can't build tension physically, right? And in the cello, because you're always moving like big muscles, you got to have like full freedom in your arms, in your shoulders, in your back, and I'm sure it's the same way in most other instruments, but I find, when I'm playing things larger than life, I always, trying to find the tension to release while keeping it in the music is the hardest part for me.
Yeah. For pianists, I think it's there's something to be said about playing fast and flashy as well, that people think that is actually probably the hardest thing to do, or something they would attribute very clearly to be virtuosic. But I would say control. Actually, you're right. Probably that is the hardest thing to do, is to tame that sound, to get that consistent pianissimo, play quiet, to to really not rush, not need to go anywhere in the moment. And easier said than done. I feel like that's the thing, that control is what makes you or breaks you.
Yeah, hold the tension in the music, not your body, and it's
That's wonderfully put. I think that's yeah, and especially with something, pianists. I feel like we are quite active, and it is fine motor skills and whatnot. But I think it's another level to be playing a string instrument because it just utilizes more of your body movement, and there's something more athletic in that endeavor. I feel like every time I look at it, I'm just astounded.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's some phenomenal double bass players, and what I'll encourage anyone listening to do is go on YouTube and find your favorite violin piece if you have one. Find your favorite Chopin etude if you have one, and see if you can find a double bassist playing it. Because if you want to talk about an athletic instrument, they're flying around. They have
Just position changing, just
flying everywhere, and I think watching a really good double bassist execute actual virtuosity it's a feat of athleticism.
Yeah. No, I think that's well put. Yeah, that, and if not, it's very entertaining. So, do you have a favorite cellist?
Do I have a favorite cellist?
I have one. I'll tell you right now. Okay. Well, Yo-Yo Ma is one of my favorites, but I would say recently I've really been into Gauthier Capuchon.
Oh,
I think it's that control thing. There's something that he has with that touch, and just I feel like I could pick him out in a lineup.
Oh yeah,
he's very distinctly.
He's got pardon the phrasing, but he has this really macho control of everything. And I mean, mind you, maybe it's the rep he performs, but what really sticks.
Sure, yeah, he's a soloist at heart.
Yeah, about Gauthier is I'd encourage everyone. You can. I think it'd be great if you suggested a specific recording, but I think his recording of the Piazzolla Le Grand Tango with Yu Wang, it just, to me, it personifies him as a soloist. This is amazing, virtuosic, flaunting sort of.
Yeah.
And I agree. Great.
To me, what is funny? I think he played the Swan in Frankfurt or something like that as an encore piece, like the Cezanne. And there's something so utterly simple about that piece, but he brought such finesse to it in that moment that I couldn't help but be taken aback that even in a sea of such virtuosic repertoire, that something so simple could be so elegant, so beautiful. So
it's that control.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, favorite cellists, it's hard to say. Do you mind if I list a few? Is that all right?
No, that's for sure. It is unfair to ask you only one.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I love the presence and performance of Solga Betta. Solga Betta is, a wonderful soloist, amazing chamber musician as well. She's, I can't say I know a lot of her lineage in playing, but oh my goodness, does she have a massive sound and a massive presence. Johannes Moser. Go follow him on social media. He has some great content. I don't know how he does it. He's running from concert to concert, playing concerto to concerto, and that it's just that control that. But it's interesting with him because he has that control, but he's willing to just tip over the edge when he needs to, right? He's so emotionally charged through his technique. You know exactly what he's feeling just from his sound.
Right.
From the finesse in his vibrato or in the very slightest rubato happening. And I love Johannes Moser. And my last one, sorry, I'm gonna give three.
No, go for it.
Brandon Cho. Love his Bach suites in particular. I always used his 6-suite prelude as my reference recording. It's just so grounded, so appropriate, and you're taking. I think his artistic decisions are always really, always done in good taste.
Right. Okay. That's wonderful. With Baroque repertoire, usually it's such a hit or miss with musicians. Even in piano, it's like, do you pedal? Do you not? You do this or that? It's like they didn't have a piano, which, by the way, might not be exactly true because the pianoforte's precursors. Anyway, we'll nerd out on that later. Okay. So, I actually thought of one too right now. I thought Jacqueline Dupre was, I think specifically, all-time great for sure. But I think her Elgar is probably her most famous, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. She brought that piece back from obscurity, right? No one was playing it for 40 years, and then
that's true.
She started programming it, and everyone's like, "Oh my goodness, this is a masterpiece."
And it's a very dark concerto. There isn't a lot like it. It's interesting to say, but yeah, it's a unique experience. If you guys get a chance to ever get tickets to hear that concerto, it is definitely a unique experience. But it's one that I feel like is quintessentially different live. I would seldom say this, especially with modern day technology. Everything is so good. Like just at the tip of our fingers, we just have so many world-class recordings and everything, and mediums and headphones to be able to hear it, and it's just astounding. But there's some live music experiences that carry differently, and every moment I feel like in that concerto is one of those. Yeah, it's just it's truly a masterpiece.
I think the Elgar concerto definitely, like, it fundamentally sticks out. You say concerto, you hear concerto, it's like, oh, it's got to be this big flashy thing,
right?
It's got to be larger than life. It's got to be, got this big finale. It has to be, a concerto. What we've conceptualized as a concerto. But I mean, mind you, the Elgar is larger than life, but it's just effectually a different place. It's not necessarily an uncommon feeling, but it's a feeling so powerful, so potent.
Yeah.
And the best way to get that out of the music is to hear it live. I entirely agree.
Yeah. Was there any live performances that you attended that you think changed you in some way or just really affected you?
Yeah, actually. So the first one that comes to mind isn't necessarily from, one of our concert greats or from, well-known touring anything. But when I was quite a few younger, still in high school, I hadn't committed to music yet. I was playing in a provincial festival, a state festival, if anyone's in the States. But, this a little bit larger, not quite national level.
Like Kelowna style, kind of? Yeah.
It was the Alberta Music Festival.
Okay, yeah, they changed the name.
Yeah, it was cool. And I, happened to be in Edmonton for this. I was, playing in my own things. But since I was there for a few days, I saw on the programming that there was a scholarship class. And I wasn't particularly familiar with what it was or whatever was going on with that, but there was only one entrant. This young cellist, I think she's 2 years younger than me, Luca Cuzzi. And this was my first exposure to Luca. It would not be the last. And in this class, she was playing the Dvorak concerto.
Yes.
And at the time, I hadn't played it yet. Of course, it's something you hear as a cellist. It's, the romantic concerto.
Right. Yeah.
And I went and, sat it on the public, performance, because they all are at these festivals. And it was life-changing for me because I didn't realize that was possible. I didn't realize that, this concert repertoire, this famous work could be done so well with such execution, by me, I mean, mind you, it wasn't me performing, but it felt like, oh my goodness, I could do this. This is what music is meant to be.
Right.
Anyways, Luca went on to win the International Apollo Cello Competition last year, and she will be performing at the Bella Concert Hall, I believe, on October 24th.
Yeah, I saw her already in the PPA. Yeah.
No, she's phenomenal. But yeah, that performance made something click for me. I don't think without that I would have gone into music.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll definitely reach out to you, Luca. We'll try to the three of us sit down as well.
You won't remember me, but I remember you.
Yeah. There we go. And hopefully we can catch you here on October 24th. Yeah. And I think that's an amazing answer. Yeah. For me, I definitely have one standout, I would say. He's actually a Canadian pianist. I feel like he's one of the greatest of all time, for whatever that means. But it's Marc-André Milan. He, that control. Oh, geez. Like, this guy is on a different level. I've heard him on campus. He came, we had doctorate students doing their, I suppose it's a master class,
Right.
After all. But he also plays live from time to time. And then I was just so fortunate to hear him. But also any of his recordings. I feel like he has an astounding discography, first of all. Like, that's especially with modernist repertoire. A lot of the modernist repertoire people that really commit, they don't tend to go back to the classics. But this guy does everything, and he does it at such a amazing and polished level that truly it will be an honor to work with him one day if I ever get the chance to. But yeah, for sure, just hearing him playing that very instrument that I know I played was just unreal. Yeah, So, sure. How do you feel about historic instruments, especially as a cellist? Have you ever tried a Baroque cello, gut strings, anything of the sort?
Well, personally, I haven't. Well, I shouldn't say that. I haven't played on a Baroque instrument with the gut strings. I haven't done the shebang.
Right.
But I've played with a Baroque bow quite a few times. We're lucky enough to have a collection of Baroque bows. With the Calgary Youth Orchestra, they have a collection.
Can you explain the difference? Is it like just sustaining, essentially?
Well, I mean, they play fundamentally differently, and yes, sustaining is really different. But a Baroque bow is often a lot more rounded. Oftentimes, they actually bow the opposite direction.
Right.
Because
Okay.
the namesake of the bow is the fact that the wood is bowing, it bends.
Yeah.
And on our contemporary bows, if this is the hair, this is the hair.
Yeah.
Our bow is going to curve in towards the hair.
Yep.
But your Baroque bow is curving away from it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So
It's kind of like an arch that just holds tension.
yeah, and you're actually getting a lot less tension in the middle of the bow,
Right.
Because you're getting a higher flex. You're not gonna, end up stopping the flex by hitting the hair on the bow. And because of that, you have these really pronounced strong and weak parts of the bow, right? It's going to be really strong at the tip and the frog, right, down at the heels.
Yeah.
And you're going to get very little in the middle.
How did it feel like the first time you grabbed it? Is it a drastic difference immediately?
It's a drastic difference. Like they're lighter and then they react differently. It makes a lot of the things your teachers say about, you need to have a brush stroke, or, you're not sustaining this like they...
Right.
It just makes a lot more sense with a Baroque bow.
You're like, I get it now.
Yeah. Of course they kind of played this romantically. Like,
Right.
But I think it's a great experience. If you have the opportunity to play on, historic instruments, it's just perspective, right? And it helps make things make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's my take on historic stuff.
That's wonderful. But I'm assuming if you ever got a chance to play it,
I'd love to. Why say no to an opportunity to experience something, right?
Yeah. I would also try to. God strings just have a very unique timbre, don't they? Yeah.
They're so warm and they never stay in tune.
Yeah, they never. And I feel like, what's the life on that? Like, yeah. Anyway, so it's very interesting. I'm really envious I feel like every pianist will tell you this. We build personal relationship with instruments too, but then we have to let go, and we have to travel, and we play wherever they provide, whatever they have. There's, you must always demand more of yourself than the instrument, but it's not even just that. It's that relationship. It's always new, but string players especially, I feel like, or really any other instrument, you just get this relationship with your instrument, and you know how to make it sound a certain way, and you've been working at it for hours, and even if you change your own strings and you do everything, you still have that taming, and I'm very envious of that. Like that you can have that kind of relationship with your extension.
I think that's a really interesting point you bring up, because especially when you're touring or generally traveling in a group with a pianist, all the string players, they have the same instrument. But the pianist, going venue to venue is walking into something new every time.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really interesting to see the process of, if you're hopping around a few places, a rehearsal and the concert are going to feel very different with the pianist, because they're as you said, it's a relationship. They're rushing through a relationship.
Yeah.
Right. They're trying to get somewhere useful where they can express through the instrument, and the instrument is, communicating back. Right. So it's a really interesting contrast between musicians. And you got singers that are their instrument. They're walking around with it all the time. And it's a cool thing to think about. Thank your pianists. If you're not a pianist,
yes.
your pianist.
Thank them. They will be shocked, and then they will forget what these words mean. But it's so what's a day like for you? It's just an average day, whether you're studying for something, preparing for a recital. Do you usually like to practice certain hours of the day? Do you like to avoid things?
Well, I'll describe it as I'm a horseshoe practicer, where I practice on either end of the horseshoe. So I'm either up, and the first thing I do in the morning is I'm practicing, and then the last thing I do is I practice until, it's too late to be making noise.
Right, ain't that a thing? You can't just put a mute or some situations, eh?
And electric cellos are not something to practice on, so
right.
I can just plug something in and be quiet.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a day for me, what would that look like? When I was a little bit more in the academic grind at school, it would be, you go to your classes. To kill time between classes, you're practicing, right? You'd be running to rehearsals, because you have 4 other students you're trying to coordinate things with, and we only have this hour today. And before you know it, it's lunch. You're practicing after lunch. You go to your classes. Your classes are done, and you say, okay, I have this big open evening, right? I can be doing, my theory assignments. I can be doing my history essays, or I could be practicing. I know which one I'd really be doing.
Right, yeah.
And then you have that same thought process, at least for me, where it's, I could be practicing, but I also don't want to do my other stuff. And then you don't practice, and then you just do nothing for a little bit.
Yeah. And then the guilt washes over, and then, allegedly.
This is all hypothetical. I practice always, but
yes.
Yeah, especially at school, it's if you're on the campus, why not take advantage of the spaces? Go practice. But as a musician, I also think it's really important that you live a life worth expressing, because if you
magic right there, yeah.
If you've only known the practice room, I mean, what are you gonna have to say? Mind you, you're gonna have some of the most technically proficient, most manicured, presentable, academic, cold, boring music.
Yes, yeah.
But I think it's necessary to see the spaces you live in. In Calgary, it's a wonderful opportunity to be super close to Banff, right?
Yeah,
it's amazing natural beauty, and if you're spending half a weekend, taking a hike, going out, seeing some nature, it inspires your music. So
yeah,
for me, I've grown to appreciate having a life away from my instrument so that I have something to tell it when I come back.
Right. I think that's a brilliant way of looking at it. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I feel like nature can't be understated for sure. But in my experience, it's usually the failures that make life a little more spicy. But I always preferred playing. The one thing that you actually touched up on right now, that I guess a pet peeve of mine, grammatical correctness in when we play, right? Like what is the difference between craft and art, really? It feels like we're all just craftsmen trying to work at our instrument. But the artistry of it is when we can walk away from that, walk away from those aesthetics that must and ideas that should. Even sometimes to a disrespectful extent. I've definitely disrespected a composer's markings on the score before.
Oh.
And being a composer myself, I'm actually okay with that. I like to not be a hypocrite.
That's sad to hear. Thank you.
So at least I try.
Yeah.
But like I had a lot of trouble competing personally because of this, because I feel like and I want your thoughts on this too, but what do you think of the whole competition scene? Because in piano competitions, it does feel like there's a little bit of redundancy towards the artistry of it all. I've seen tenured professors contradict each other to their face. I've seen one guy say that these markings on the score aren't the most accurate way or in poor taste, but little did they know that wasn't my marking. That was my prof's or somebody else's.
Yeah.
It was, I've seen all kinds of things, and I feel like there's a lot of unnecessary, weight behind all the subjective.
I think, yeah, a music competition, like, inherently, that's flawed.
Isn't that a wild thing to even just say out loud?
It's the crazy thing to be like, you know what we should do with this expression we have? We should compare it to everything else.
Yeah.
I think, comparison is the thief of joy, and if the job of music is to make you feel something, and you take all the joy out of it, then, well, all of a sudden there's a big gap in what you're meant to be doing. Competitions, to me as a cellist, I see them as a means to an end, where, if you're competing for the sake of competing, I don't think there's a lot of artistry to that. Rather, I think there's, the benefits of competing can assist the artistry, but it's not the competition itself, right? Where, at least in the cello world, competitions mean you're either playing with an orchestra, right? You get this amazing performance opportunity, or perhaps it's for an instrument loan, so you get to work with a really high quality tool for a while,
right?
Or in the case of some of the larger competition, I was thinking the Paolo, the Queen Elizabeth, right? For these things, if you make it far in these competitions, it's actually about setting up a career for yourself, right? Yeah. So many of them get picked up by agencies, they get record deals or whatever, they get the exposure, If you're in a competition, you get the exposure, and all of a sudden, you have a way to share your music with people because they're tuning in to listen,
Yeah.
So I guess it boils down to, I don't think that the competition inherently doesn't help artistry. But, the reasons we compete can be for a greater goal. And I think that's important.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that. It's for sure a means to an end. And exposure is a big thing. There's a lot of really talented musicians out there, and they're all very unique. And the only thing that I would refrain as a caveat to keep in mind is that it is important to not lose yourself in this. I have seen many a comrade fall. So, but seriously, you see some of the things in the name of doing it the right way be lost. And you see a kid who came into a conservatory leave it and plays much like many of his other peers, but he had a lot more to contribute, I feel like sometimes.
A little less like themselves.
Yeah. And I feel like barring that, which is to me an ultimate tragedy, towards individuality in music. If I had it my way, let me just preach a manifesto real quick. Just gotta clear my voice. So I do all my playing a piacere, which is fancy Italian term for at pleasure. And it is essentially a guy who doesn't want to rehearse dynamic markings and takes rubato to the next level. But fundamentally, that kind of extreme, which, for those of you listening, I will be performing the Beethoven sonatas like that. Yes, many a professor will cringe, but it is my recital, so I get to do whatever I want. So that I feel like that extreme end is exactly what I need, at least, to let go of all these things that are always on my mind, and they intrude, and it's very much real. You try to be in a meditative state when you're playing on stage, but you can't help it. That they just come. But yeah, did you ever have anything like that? That you knew that although this is the right way, this just doesn't feel right, and
I mean, oftentimes, right? I think something that happens when you spend. I actually think it happens on both ends, where if you spend not enough time with a piece or you spend too much time with a piece, you start hearing it a different way, right?
Yeah.
For me, at least, I know I often go into a piece, I've listened to some recordings, I do a bit of score study, and then I just start practicing it, right? I just start playing it, you know, I break it down, and then before I know it, I'm playing it through. But before I get guidance on it, it's a different piece fundamentally. It feels different. It's saying something different from, you know, what it is doing, what it's saying after I've, you know, gotten a lot of guidance on it, after I brought it to lessons and master classes. And while, you know, that could be chalked up to, oh, you know, you just don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're injecting things into it that shouldn't be put into it.
You just don't feel like practicing that. Yeah.
Practicing it the right way. You don't you don't want to play it, you know, how it should be played. But like, if in that state, in that, you know, in that precursory state where it's a little raw and maybe it's wrong, if even when it's there, it still feels like something. If you as a listener or you as a performer, you know, feel something from that, is that still not effective music?
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Speaking of which leads me into my next very light question. Don't worry, I try to end all podcasts with this. It's nice and, well, given that this is the first one, good luck. Yeah, so it's that's right. And it's you know, just a little question. What is art?
Art?
Yeah. They just drop his leg and just walk away now.
What I meant to
And then
regast it.
just cut like
No. So I mean, it's a great great question.
Do you see the steam coming in his ear?
I'm, you know, trying to figure something out. I mean, art is expression. Art is taking anything that's part of the human experience and molding it into an intentional evocation. That's what I'll say.
That's a great definition.
Art is something that makes you feel something. There you go.
Great. Hear that, sweetheart? Your art. Yeah. So thank you, Takumi. Thank you for joining me today. It was thanks, and I hope this was fun for you, like it was for me. And look at me go with small talk. This is why you don't give musicians mics, okay? But yeah, thanks, guys. Tune in next time.